Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. One of the things I learned on my trip to Israel 25 years ago involved the area known as the Kidron Valley, just on the eastern side of Jerusalem. You may vaguely remember Bible passages that refer to the Kidron Valley, and in essence, it is the small valley between the walled city of Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives where the Garden of Gethsemane is. What you may find interesting is that today it is a very large cemetery. In Jewish thought, it was believed that the Messiah will come from the east, over the Mount of Olives, and so many have chosen to be buried there in order to be among the first to greet the arriving Messiah. What surprised me is the tradition that loved ones will place stones on the graves there. If I remember it correctly, the stones are meant to keep the soul there until the Messiah comes. This week we are moving slowly through the story of the raising of Lazarus. Yesterday we learned about Jesus delaying his going to Lazarus, who was ill, in order that he would be revealed as the Son of God. Today we want to look at Jesus' encounter with one of Lazarus' sisters, Martha. The sense you get overall from this gospel story is that Martha was a practical woman. In an earlier story, when Jesus was speaking at their home, she busied herself with the tasks of hosting everyone, while her sister Mary sat at Jesus' feet listening. Both were doing what was important, but Jesus knew that his time was limited and praised Mary for making the most of the opportunity to be with him. When Jesus finally arrived in Bethany, it had been 4 days since Lazarus had died. Whenever they went anywhere, they mostly walked, so it had taken time for the message to reach Jesus that Lazarus was ill. And then Jesus delayed 2 days, and then it took time to get to Bethany too. That timeline is important because in that day, they believed that after someone died, the soul hovered around the body in the grave for 3 days after death, hoping to re-enter the body. But after the 3rd day, when the soul sees that the color of its face has changed, the soul leaves the body for good. What this means is that Lazarus is really dead. It's been 4 days. There's no hope that he will be brought back at that point. There are crowds around when Jesus arrives as well, professional mourners who know death when they see it and who can serve as witnesses to what Jesus does. And also, being so close to Jerusalem, those critical of Jesus are also there. When Martha greeted Jesus on the edge of town, it is clear she had expected him to do something when he learned that Lazarus was ill. She complains, but not because of her unbelief in Jesus, but because she believed so strongly. Even now, she says, still faithful. Even now, I know that the Lord will give you whatever you ask of him. She says the words, but somehow you get the idea that she doesn't really expect Lazarus to rise. No one would. Jesus answered her that Lazarus will rise again, responding intellectually in an open-ended way. He's engaging her in a theological discussion that speaks of Lazarus rising, but without a timeline for when this will happen. So Martha assumes he is talking about resurrection at the end of time. I know, she replies, at the last day. Then Jesus gets explicit. I am the resurrection and the life, he says. Jesus is identifying himself as the fulfillment of eschatological expectations. What that means is that Jesus is the fulfillment there and then, here and now, of God's new kingdom that we expect at the end of time. He tells Martha that resurrection is not lodged in a distant future or event, but available in the very person of Jesus. Jesus rules the present and future lives of his believers. The two phrases, one who believes and dies, yet shall he live, and the one who lives and believes in me will never die, spell out first the effect Jesus has on believers' deaths, and then the effect Jesus has on the believer's life. In other words, for Jesus, resurrection means that physical death has no power over believers. Their future is already determined and assured by their faith in Jesus. For Jesus to be life shapes the believer's present within the gift of eternal life. It changes priorities and actions. Now, to her credit, practical Martha gets it. Yes, Lord, she says, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. She recognizes who Jesus is and gives him the title he is due. Her confession of faith is the equal of Peter's when he confesses that Jesus is the Messiah, and that of Thomas after the resurrection when Thomas calls him my Lord and my God. It's important to note here that Jesus met Martha where she was. I don't mean at the edge of town. I mean that the theological discussion and recognition of Jesus as the Son of God was what Martha needed in response to her brother's death. This was the comfort she was looking for. Jesus met her there. Tomorrow we will look at the other sister, Mary's encounter with Jesus, and we will see an entirely different discussion. Grab a stone and hang around. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.